Welcome everybody to today's video. In this lesson, we're going to be discussing verbs because verbs are essential to any type of communication in order to say that somebody is doing something somewhere at some time. We have to have these verbs in order to tell any kind of story. So, without further ado, let's jump right in and look at what these verbs are like in Spanish. So, right from the very start, we need to know what is a verb. And as we just talked about, a verb is an action. To swim, to dance, to sing, to do anything. A verb is an action. An action or a state of being. So that somebody is tall, somebody is short, somebody is excited, anything like that, those are verbs as well. Now, in Spanish, a verb is made up of a couple of different parts of the word. We're going to divide these parts up, separate them out, look at what each one has different pieces of information. So if we were to look at the verbs in their basic forms, we would see things like this. So we would have things like to speak, hablar, to eat, comer, to live, vivir, things like that. These in the simple to speak, to eat, to live, things like that, this is what's called the infinitive. So this is the whole verb altogether. And that is, as we said, it is the infinitive. The infinitive is the basic form of the verb. It is simply to do something. So this is the form in the pure dictionary way of talking. Okay? You're not assigning anybody that's doing this action, and you don't know when it has taken place. It is just the actual action itself. That's the infinitive, like this. And you can see that it's either going to end in AR, ER, or IR. All verbs in Spanish are going to end in one of these three ways: AR, ER, and IR. Out of these, AR is the most common, and then ER, and then IR. Okay? So since AR is the most common, we're going to look mostly at these ones because those are the ones that you're going to use most often. Now, the whole thing is the infinitive, but this first section right here, everything besides the last two letters, is what's called the stem. Now, the stem is important because this contains the what. So this is what is actually being done. What verb are you talking about? So we could have that right here. This is the stem. This is the stem. This is the stem. So all of these different verbs have stems. We can see that right there. Now, the other part of the verb, this ending, the AR, ER, and IR, is called the ending. Okay? Which makes sense because it comes at the end of the verb. Okay? This has a crucial piece of information. This actually has two pieces of information that we can change here. So this is the who and when. Because when we have a verb, something like to speak, well, a verb by itself isn't doing anything. So we need somebody that is doing the speaking. We need somebody that is doing the eating, or that is doing the living and things like that. We need somebody that is actually performing this action. And we need a when. We need to know, did this happen in the past? Is it going to happen in the future? Is it happening right now? Anything like that. So the who and the when, that is going to be communicated by the ending right here. Now this is important because this stays the same, right? If we are talking about swimming, whether it's I swim, you swim, he swims, she swims, we swim, whoever's doing it, we're still talking about swimming. So that's going to remain the same. What changes is this over here. So this changes. Okay? And we can mark this. This is going to be changed because we're going to get rid of this and we're going to replace it with something else. We're going to put on a new ending because the AR, well, this goes with the infinitive. And that's just the to do it. Now, if we're putting it with these different people and we're changing who we're talking about, well, we have to change it with this over here because this tells us who. So we need a new ending to put on this. So for that, we are going to go and put it right here. So if I'm talking about yo, I'm going to change the AR to an O. Do that. So now we drop this AR off and we replace it with an O, so it is now hablo. Two, okay, so if I'm talking about you, I'm going to replace this with us. So again, we're getting rid of the AR and we're substituting it with AS. L and A and usted, all three of these are going to have A. Nosotros, nosotras is going to have amos. Ellos, ellas, and ustedes is going to be on. So again, we drop the AR off and we put on there. We drop the AR off and we put amos there. Now, we're going to ignore vosotros for a minute because we don't use it except for when we're in Spain. So, since most of the time we're not going to use it, we're just going to set it off to the side for a minute. We'll come back to it in a later time. So, if we have these verbs here, so we're just going to take hablar, okay? Put that right up there, put this here. And we can take these examples because this is going to be here, right? So we have all of these different people that we could be talking about. Yourself, you, he, she, you formally, we, they, and you all. And we're going to take these endings over here and they match up, right? So we have yo is o, tú is as, L and A is a, nosotros is amos, ellos and ellas is an, and ustedes. So now, if we have this stem that we have right here, we can replace the ending and we just move it up. So if we have yo hablo, for I speak. Tú hablas, you speak. Él habla, for he speaks. Ella habla, for she speaks. Or usted habla, for you speak, if you're speaking formally. Nosotros hablamos, or nosotras hablamos. Remember, this one is used if you're talking exclusively about a group of girls. Or you can have ellos hablan, ellas hablan, or ustedes hablan. But whatever you have, you still have this ab. Okay, this tells you what action that you're doing, which is speak. Now you're just switching between all of these different people, the subjects, the who, right? And you're saying who is doing it. Whether it's he's doing it, I'm doing it, you're doing it, we're doing it. Whoever it is, this is staying the same. This is changing. You just have to go right along there. That is, in a nutshell, the way the chart works. So now if we have these endings for the AR verbs, we just need the endings for the ER and the IR. And those ones are going to be pretty similar. Okay? These all follow a very similar pattern. So as long as we know the AR, it's going to be really easy to pick up the ER and the IR. So let's take a look at the ER chart right here. So yo is still going to be O. Who changes from os to s. So now we're getting rid of the A and we're switching over to E, which makes sense because A goes with AR and E goes with ER. Pretty straightforward. So knowing that pattern, you can probably guess that this A switches over to an E because again, A, AR, E, ER. Okay, so right here, amos switches over to amos, and on switches over to N. There you go. So, like I said, really straightforward, simple pattern. This O, as, a, amos, on, that's going to be really, really important to know. So if you can remember this, it's going to be a lot easier to remember this. Now, let's take a look at the IR. Okay, so here, we're still, yo is just an O. So that's really easy, really straightforward. Anytime you're talking about this yourself, the verb is going to end with an O. So just get rid of the ending, the AR, ER, and IR, and just replace it with an O. 2, you might think it goes to is for the I, but it's actually going to stay S. And this one is still going to stay A. And this one over here still stays N. Okay, so all of these ones are exactly the same as the ER. So a lot of times we'll just combine these two charts and we'll call it the ER-IR chart because they're very similar. The only one that is different is this one right here. And this one does change it for an I. So when we're talking about we, it goes amos, amos, emos. Just like that. Okay? So, and you can see from here that these charts are really related. Okay? As I was mentioning before, if you know this one here, if you know the AR, you're easily going to pick up the ER, you're going to pick up the IR. So the last thing we have to do is talk about vosotros. Now we skipped vosotros because it's only used in Spain, so most of the time you're not using it, but it is important to know because sometimes you might go to Spain and you might need to use this and you might talk to somebody who is from Spain. So it's nice to know. Let's take a look at these ones here. They are just like this. So, you have these endings here. They're good to know. It's nice information to have, and we'll introduce and practice with it, but you're not going to be tested on it. You're not going to be required to know it. It's good information to have, and we'll keep it there. Okay? Well, there you go, guys. That is an introduction to verbs. I don't expect that we have this mastered yet, but this is how we're going to use verbs going forward, and we will absolutely use all of this information here to start changing and creating and communicating with original sentences. So if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we'll see you later. Hasta luego.